Amanda, sort of the way that the films, I mean, you're right in the thick of it, so you can actually appreciate the way the nature of how we watch films is. Yeah.
And I know, I've had different responses from people who've just watched what they call the screener, which is when you get it sent as a Vimeo link to people, and then those who sit in the room and have Celia right in their face and she's looking at you, eyeballing you on this great big screen. There's a whole different intimate sense of connection that you don't get when you're just watching a screen that's sitting on your desk or, wherever you are. I think it's a very, very... for something...
And it gets more complicated too. Someone says here, rightfully says, hang on a minute, watched Roma yesterday afternoon. It ain't no TV movie. Watch before you critique. Apparently it is extraordinary.
Yes.
And I really, really do hope that this wins Best Picture because it'll make history being the first foreign language film to do so. But look, I want to jump in. I want to touch on this. We need to talk. I know we talked about this before, but I need to talk about Lime scooters. So I what?
From the Oscars to the Lime scooters.
I had an epiphany this morning. It was huge.
In the shower?
No, come on, Amanda. I bust into the Auckland CBD and I thought, hang on, Monday morning, what's changed? Everyone seems a bit more sombre, depressed, down on the buzz. Guess what? 10 minutes later, it hit me. No Lime scooters. None of that city buzz.
So you think the Lime scooters buzz up the vibe?
I do. I really, really do. I was a profound disbeliever, but I thought, no Lime scooters, Matt. Do you miss them?
There's a place for them. I think the current setup's a bit haphazard, where you see them scattered all over the footpath. I mean, having
along with their central riders
repository. No, I mean, I think there's it's interesting to talk about the debate. Cycle lanes. It's basically we need to create spaces that are safe for all the footpath, road and cycle lane users, and we need to have this discussion because not everyone's going to have an electric bike or a mountain bike, but those little scooters are pretty handy for hopping around town.
Well, the Matt Lowry from Greater Auckland Man has said this is, in terms of transport, 2018 was the year of the scooter, whether you like it or not. Speaking of disruptors, it is huge. In fact, they're a revolution. What do you make of them?
Look, I think there has got to be other options for transport, especially in cities. And it is quite buzzy seeing people just doing this dance on these little things right in front of you. I suppose I've heard some pretty horrific stories of people who have used them and ended up having accidents and feeling like they're not adequately either prepped, or like this one person hired one in Auckland and then they went down to a particular area where there were lots of Pahutakawa routes and unsafe basically, and she had a monster of an accident and is lucky that she didn't end up in hospital. But I think it's one of those things that if we're going to have this form of transport, then there has to be in effect, the lanes or the place where people can feel that this is a comfortable way to move, and this is the new world.
A lot of response about Roma. Damn right, read Roma. Myself and my partner were both so pleased. We did look at it on Netflix and did not pay at cinema. Never watched the boring end. Also knew regular movie-going friends who walked out of the theatre. And Wallace, you are such a loser who bangs on about Lime. You're missing Lime. You're a sad man. But who isn't sad is a wonderful Matt Nippert and Amanda Miller. You've been wonderful this afternoon.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. And Olivia Colton wins Best Actress. Max, thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. On tonight's program, a potentially devastating third Queensland fruit fly has been found on Auckland's North Shore. The report into bullying in the Black Sticks women's hockey team finds 3/4 of the players interviewed had serious concerns about a negative environment. Some had been complaining for years. Auckland Mayor Phil Goff says he doesn't give a damn that there's only been 155 Lime scooter braking incidents. It's a fault, he says, that could kill. Hold on to your +4s. More than 100 kilos of meth is found hidden in golf cart batteries. And we talk to the Christchurch rest home owner who doesn't have enough room for all their residents. RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leia Dawa DNA. Millions of dollars worth of methamphetamine have been discovered inside golf carts in one of the country's biggest drug busts. 2 handguns were found along with 110 kilograms of meth found inside the batteries of 3 golf carts imported from the United States last month. Customs Investigations Manager Bruce Berry says the smugglers had gone to some trouble to conceal their crime because the batteries were still fully functioning despite being packed with drugs.
The concealment is particularly sophisticated to the extent that the batteries were lead-lined and had all the cells of working batteries and included an electrical charge.
Bruce Berry says this is the first time firearms have been found hidden inside drugs imported into New Zealand. 2 men arrested at the weekend appeared in the Auckland District Court this afternoon, charged with importing and possessing the Class A drug. A Napier fishing company has been hit with what's believed to be the largest ever fine imposed on a commercial fishing operation in this country. Hawke's Bay Seafoods, 2 subsidiaries, its directors and a manager have been ordered to pay more than $1 million for their sustained underreporting of their blue nose catch. 131 charges laid by the Ministry for Primary Industries had earlier been admitted. Judge Bill Hastings said the underreporting gave the defendants a commercial advantage over those filing correct returns and could also affect the accurate assessment of New Zealand's fish stock.
If fish management decisions are based on inaccurate information, fish stock could be overfished, diminishing potential long-term benefits to New Zealand and the fishing industry, or fish stock limits could be unnecessarily restricted, resulting in lost fishing opportunities.
Judge Bill Hastings in the Wellington District Court this afternoon. Another male Queensland fruit fly found on Auckland's North Shore could have come from the same piece of discarded fruit as 2 other flies. It's been found 113 metres from one found last week in Northcote. Jessie Chang reports.
The fly was found in what's known as Zone A, a 200-metre area where the movement of fruit and vegetables is restricted. The Queensland species was first detected nearly 2 weeks ago in Devonport. In a separate incident, 2 Phasealis fruit flies native to Tonga have been detected in Otara. Biosecurity New Zealand says staff have collected 3 tonnes of fruit and processed 300 kilograms of it, but so far no eggs or more flies have been found. This is Jessie Chang.
The Bohemian Rhapsody star Rami Malek has won the Best Actor Oscar for his portrayal of Queen lead singer Freddie Mercury at the 91st Academy Awards. And Lady Gaga has taken up the Oscar for Best Original Song for Shallow from the film A Star Is Born. She tearfully thanked her co-star Bradley Cooper.
My family's here. I love you, Mom and Dad, Bradley. There is not a single person on the planet that could have sang this song with me but you. Thank you for believing in us. Thank you so much.
Lady Gaga. Olivia Colman has just won Best Actress for The Favourite. In other awards, the Mexican film Roma has taken out Best Foreign Language Film and Best Cinematography. Mahershala Ali won Best Supporting Actor for Green Book, while Regina King won Best Supporting Actress for If Beale Street Could Talk. A man who led the police on a high-speed chase at close to 2 Auckland schools has pleaded guilty to driving charges. Late last month, the police received reports that a man had shot a gun on the North Shore. He fled the scene, driving through the city before arriving in South Auckland. The police shot at the car at a busy intersection in Manurewa before the driver was eventually stopped in Weymouth. In the North Shore District Court today, a 44-year-old man pleaded guilty to 3 driving charges, but not guilty to 5 other charges, including several related to firearms. He has been remanded in custody until his next court appearance in April. The man killed in a jet boat accident yesterday is being remembered as a passionate river racer and a family man. 46-year-old Cameron Moore died when the boat he was racing on the Clutha River near Wanaka left the water. His navigator, 34-year-old Adam Wilton, is recovering in Dunedin Hospital with concussion and broken fingers. A spokesperson for the Jet Boat River Racing Association, Paul Mullen, says other competitors and jet boaters are reeling from the accident.
Cameron was just the strongest supporter of jet boat river racing. He has a boat in America and he travels to America to race over there. He was just a passionate person about racing.
Paul Mullen of the Jet Boat River Racing Association. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 5. A comprehensive review of the New Zealand women's hockey team has revealed more than half the players had serious concerns about the team's environment. The review, commissioned by Hockey New Zealand and done by Auckland-based employment lawyer Maria Dew last September, was initiated after negative culture allegations were made after last year's World Cup. Former coach Mark Hager accidentally sent a mass email naming and shaming players' performances. The review draws on 65 confidential interviews, including 33 players, past and present, 24 of whom reported their concerns. A final draft received in December and finalised last month was reduced to a summary for distribution today. Hockey New Zealand's chair Mike Bignell has given an assurance that the condensed version doesn't mean anything has been hidden.
We had to ensure that we meet our legal obligations around confidentiality and privacy, and that is why we had to take a little bit of time from that final report being issued. The key findings that Maria has put out is what we have released today. That allows us to have maintained the requirements confidentially for all those participants in the review and anyone else who might be affected.
Mike Bignell. The Kiwis and the Kiwi Ferns will play a double header against their Australian counterparts in Wollongong on Labour Day in October. In the last double header at Mount Smart Stadium in October, the Kiwis beat the Kangaroos 26-24 and the Kiwi Ferns lost to the Jillaroos by the same score. The last time the New Zealand men's team beat the Kangaroos in Australia was in 2015. The Kiwis' next test is against Tonga in June. That's the news.
Squeezing the line.
Imagine if you were hiring a bicycle that fell apart when you were riding it, or you were hiring a rental car that the brakes failed on.
Hitting the home.
In many cases, the 1978 standard, if it hasn't deteriorated, it's still good to go.
And feeling the chill.
I went for a run around Lake Hayes this morning around about 5 o'clock, beanie on, gloves on, which in February is a little bit surprising.
Up early and running. Morning reports every weekday morning from 6 till 9. Then on 9 to noon, is our health system equal access? A new study of high needs patients suggests it's not. And after 10, air pollution, you can't always see it, but British pollution scientist Gary Fuller warns it's potentially an invisible killer. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty. Mainly fine, a few showers about Great Barrier Island and the east coast of Northland and isolated showers this afternoon and evening elsewhere. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, showers becoming isolated tomorrow morning, then clearing later. Waitomo to Horowhenua, also the central high country, mostly fine. Kapiti Coast, Wellington, Wairarapa and coastal Marlborough. Occasional showers gradually clearing to fine by tonight. Inland Marlborough, Nelson, Buller and Westland mainly fine, but chances of a shower about coastal Buller this afternoon and evening, and coastal Westland and Buller tomorrow. Canterbury and Otago fine today, cloud gradually developing tomorrow with a few spots of rain in Otago from the afternoon. Fiordland and Southland fine today, mostly cloudy with drizzle tomorrow about Fiordland and Stewart Island. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, the odd shower clearing tomorrow morning. It's 5:08 and you're with RNZ National. Thanks, Susanna. And this is Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. And then there were three. A third Queensland fruit fly has been found on Auckland's North Shore in less than a fortnight. The fruit fly has the potential to devastate the horticulture industry. Our reporter Alex Perrottet is in Northcote where the latest discovery has been made. He joins us via live view. Hi, Alex. Whereabouts are you and what's going on there?
Oh, I'm here on Clarence Street in Northcote, Lisa. This is, as you said, where the third male Queensland fruit fly has been detected. Remember, there are 2 Tongan ones in Otara, so 5 in total. They're all male, and for that reason, we're calling it a detection, not an incursion. We're in a garden here, and for those of you who are viewing, this is a fruit fly trap. Inside is a pretty potent, I guess it's an insecticide strip, and it attracts males. And so the males that have been found in these sorts of containers. They've been found dead and they've been collected. But of course, these are fruit trees, and so we've got these pink slips that are attached to each one. I guess we presume that they've been numbered. This one's 20, the next tree next to it is 21. So these trees are checked, probably not every day, but there are MPI, Biosecurity New Zealand staff that come around to these properties to collect the fruit, to inspect it, to make sure, of course, that we're not finding any larvae inside them.
Have you got any idea, first of all, when does it flip over into being an incursion? How many fruit flies do you have to have before you decide that they've established a colony, it's an invasion as such?
You there, Lisa?
Yeah, Alex, I'm not sure if you can hear me still, but I'm just wondering how many fruit flies do you need to have before they decide it's some kind of invasion?
We might just keep it rolling.
We might have to try and go back to Alex. He's just lost the connection at the moment, but he's on the North Shore there where this third fruit fly has been discovered. As he mentioned, it's a male fruit fly and they've set traps in that area. It's the third to be found in the past 2 weeks. We'll try and get him back a little later in the show. But more than 100 kilograms of methamphetamine and 2 handguns have been discovered inside some golf cart batteries in one of the country's biggest drug busts. Customs officials found the drugs and firearms after inspecting a shipping container from the United States last month. Katie Scotcher reports.
$55 million worth of methamphetamine and 2 handguns were found inside the batteries of 3 6-seater golf carts. Investigations manager Bruce Berry says the concealment, which is one of the largest to be discovered in New Zealand, was highly sophisticated.
The batteries are a completely sealed unit. When they were cut open, they had acrylic boxes, as you see in the blue there in the middle, which contain the plastic bags of methamphetamine.
The acrylic boxes were lined with lead sheets, like batteries.
And inside is a small battery which would provide an electrical current if the battery was tested. There are also battery cells, if the top was open, to be able to give the appearance of a real battery.
Mr Berry says this is the first time firearms have been found concealed with smuggled drugs in New Zealand.
Of particular concern to Customs as we did this examination was the location of 2 handguns, a 9mm Ruger and a 22mm pistol. They were concealed within the drugs, within the concealment. This shows a changing risk demographic not only to the New Zealand community, but also to the officers that are involved in drug smuggling investigations.
The drugs and guns were shipped from the United States, but custom officers suspect they originate from Mexico. Mr Berry says traditional drug borders are a thing of the past.
And what we're seeing, particularly out of Central and Southern America, is drugs moving into the Americas and Canada and coming into Australasia. It's nothing new. We're also seeing unprecedented collaboration between different types of transnational crime. No longer can you say it is one source country or one area.
A 39-year-old Taiwanese citizen and a 27-year-old Chinese citizen were arrested over the weekend and appeared in the Auckland District Court today. They faced charges of importing and possessing a Class A controlled drug.
One of them had been here for about 12 months and one for a shorter period of time. It's clear, though, that they were here solely for the purpose of facilitating the drug importation.
Bruce Berry says the investigation is ongoing and they have not ruled out further arrests. I tamaki makoto mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Katie Scotcher aho.
Let's go back to Alex Perrottet. I think we've managed to resurrect him over there on the North Shore where this third Queensland fruit fly has been found. Alex, you said, well, it's not an incursion. There's 3 now. So when does it get to the point when it is an incursion?
Yeah, good question, Lisa. What happens is I've been told that it's still a detection because they're all males. We're right in the Zone A here, about 80 or 100 metres down the road behind me. You probably won't be able to see it. It's one of those signs telling people you're entering or you're leaving the Zone A, the controlled area. Also inside that zone, we have these bins here, the yellow-lidded bins from Biosecurity New Zealand. This is where people have to put their fruit, and what we're looking out for, of course, is fruit that has larvae inside, little white rice looking things, which is of course the eggs, and of course that tells us that females are here and we have breeding. At that point it becomes an incursion. These bins are all fresh and new. It looks like they were replaced today, all empty.
Anything
nice
in there, Alex?
Black garbage bins, but these are No, there's nothing there. It's very fresh. We've checked out both of these bins. There's nothing in there at all. But hopefully there will be more fruit put in it. And of course, day by day, MPI and Biosecurity do visit places like this. A property just behind us that has a lot of fruit trees. As we saw before, they've tagged them pink. They're putting a lot of effort into this. No indication yet that the costs have blown out. It's still estimated to be about $2.6 million investment so far in getting this under control. And of course, 140 full-time staff working on it. So they are taking this very seriously indeed.
Absolutely, because it is an industry that makes us a lot of money, the horticultural industry. So they're all boys at the moment, these fruit flies, and until they get a breeding colony, that will obviously when they will be deeply concerned. But can you tell us anything about how far the spread is from where this one is that was found, where you are, and the other two? Are they miles apart or close?
No, they're only about I think it was 133 metres down the road, so that actually caused Zone A to expand a bit, but that only includes about 10 extra houses. So Zone A is still within, Vincent Street, Clarence Road, bordering Queen Street, and of course it's on Northcote Point, so it kind of borders the water as well. So it's a little pocket there. Of course, as well, we have Zone B, so that's that broader area where you can bring food that you've brought from shops in and out of the zone, but if you've got your own homegrown, garden-grown fruit and vegetables, that's what you've got to keep an eye on as well and put into these bins if it does look a little bit dodgy. So Zone B, not as strict. Zone A, very strict. No fruit and vegetable coming in or out. If you do have fruit and veg, it's got to go into these bins. And of course, keep a lookout for the all-important larvae, which, as you say, indicates that we do have an incursion. At the moment, it's 5 males, 3 from Queensland, 2 from Tonga, and we'll keep an eye out to see whether there's going to be any more.
Thanks, Alex. That is Alex Perrottet there, who's on Auckland's North Shore, just reporting on the 3rd Queensland fruit fly that has been found. As he says, it's not an incursion yet. They're all males. There's nothing to indicate a breeding colony has been established. Auckland Mayor Phil Goff says Lime should have told the council as soon as it knew there was a brake fault with its e-scooters, but it didn't, and it was media reports that first alerted the council to the serious safety issue. Lime scooters will be off Auckland streets for at least another 24 hours, with the council still waiting for proof the fault that causes the brakes to lock up has been solved. I asked the Mayor if Auckland Council was picking on Lime.
No, we're certainly not picking on them, and those comments that were reported, I think, are really out of line. This is not about picking on them. It's not about discriminating between operators. It's not about rejecting a new form of transportation. It's plain and simple around safety. Now, there were 2 safety debates. The first safety debate was around things like what sort of regulatory framework do you need, speed limits, etc. And that's a debate that will occur over time. But the one that can't occur over time is where there is an inherent defect in the scooter itself. And what we discovered, not because they informed us, but originally through the media, through individuals saying, hey, we've had this problem, and a pattern emerged, was that there is an inherent defect whereby the anti-crime, anti-theft device in the scooter can suddenly and unexpectedly come on. And if you're travelling at 20, 30 k's an hour, that's going to throw you over the top of the scooter, and that's going to put you at risk of serious injury or death.
Just to be clear, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to be clear, when were you formally notified from Lime that there was a fault with their scooters, or has that never happened?
I think that probably occurred between officials and Lime in the course of last week. This is being handled, and properly so in my view, at an official level. It's about technical and safety information and the regulatory role of Auckland Transport and Council. But we should have been, just to pick up your point, Lisa, I think we should have been told as soon as Lime found out that there was a built-in defect that was causing wheels to lock unexpectedly. We should have been advised. Now, I want to go back to your first
question. But you
question.
weren't. You weren't, though, Mr Mayor, because they have said that they've...
to my knowledge.
No, they have said they have known for, quote, a few weeks.
Yeah.
So the council was notified last week. They've known days longer than that.
Yeah. What I regard as really bad was the Asia Pacific boss saying, look, it's only 155 reported incidents, and that's a 0.0086% of all rides. I don't give a damn. 155 reported incidents and 30 of them resulting in injuries is an inherent product defect which in any vehicle on the road would result in an immediate recall.
Well, that's also just...
I don't think you can write off that it's only a tiny percentage when there is a defect where an unsuspecting rider can be thrown off the scooter and subject to possible injury or death.
Details matter here. So the 155, do we know that that's all of the incidents? Is that just incidents that riders have directly reported? How are they correlating their numbers?
It's been described as 155 reported incidents. So you might imagine that there were some incidents that weren't reported, and that would be a minimum figure.
What do you know about the nature of the injuries? They are supposed to be supplying the council with incident reports. What do you know already about the injuries? Anything?
Well, we know what we've read in the media, essentially, and that is from a couple of people that were subjected to reasonably serious injuries. And I have to say, I raised my concern too that one of the individuals said he was travelling at 40 k's an hour downhill. Frankly, in my view, travelling at 40 k's an hour on a small vehicle like that with tiny wheels and all the imperfections in the roads, etc., that is not a safe speed to be going at. But that's not the key point. The key point is for reasons that had nothing to do with the operation of the bike, the wheel locked, and that guy could have been subjected to even worse injuries. OK,
so in the time that this has come to a head, you still don't have incident reports that you can see how individuals were injured. You're relying on media reports still at this point, correct?
Our officers are getting further reporting through from Lime, and a condition of their having their licence restored is that, one, we get a full set of incident reports and on an ongoing basis. Two, that they have their international experts and we will have our own experts looking at their analysis as to what has caused it, whether the fix is working and whether these machines are safe.
Get that. Those were the conditions that were brought in on Friday, right? Prior to that, was there any obligation in their contract with you, the arrangement for the trial, was there any obligation for them to report incidents, faults to you directly in a timely fashion before you brought these rules in on Friday?
I can't answer that because it's been dealt with at staff at an operational level, but what I'm presuming is that there wasn't a tight enough set of controls, that the focus was on broader safety issues, not on a product defect. As soon as the firm knew that they had a product defect, in my view, it was incumbent on them to report that to our Auckland Transport and Council officials.
So in your mind, does the buck stop with Lime on this then?
Look, absolutely the responsibility is with Lime, and I just want to note that I've read in a Stuff article that's just come out that Lime has apologised and that their Auckland manager has said that they will give the highest priority to rider and community safety. In my view, that should always have been the priority.
So how honest has Lime been with the council?
Well, I think you'd need to talk to those that were working on a day-to-day.
You're the mayor, though. You're the mayor.
Yeah, I know. But that, because I'm mayor, doesn't mean to say that I deal with technical and operational matters. I don't, and I can't, given the range of responsibilities that I have. Properly, this is dealt with at an operational and technical level by officers, and I believe that the actions that they took on Friday were absolutely appropriate, and I back those 100%.
If you find that Lime has intentionally misled the council, is that it for them? Over.
If there was an intentional misleading of or deception by Lime, that would be taken incredibly seriously by council.
So gone?
You wouldn't have confidence in an organisation that deceived you or misled you deliberately. And in saying that, I have no evidence yet that that is what they have done.
And that's Phil Goff, the Mayor of Auckland. In the past few minutes, Auckland Council says it has had some communication from Lime today, but it's yet to receive all of the information which was requested on Friday. The Council says once it has that information, it will need at least 24 hours to assess it before making any further decisions on Lime's scooter. It is almost 24 minutes after 5 and you're on Checkpoint on RNZ National. If you've been keeping an eye or an ear on the Oscars, just to let you know, the movie Green Book has won Best Film. They also picked up Best Supporting Actor for Mahershala Ali and also Best Original Screenplay. So Best Film, not long announced, Green Book. We'd love to hear from you, so you can text us on 2101, you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. A commercial fishing company has had a record-breaking fine of more than $1 million imposed on it for sustained underreporting of its blue nose catch. Hawke's Bay Seafoods and its two subsidiaries, Ocean Enterprises in Esplanade No. 3, along with directors Nino and Joe de Esposito and General Manager Marcus de Esposito, were sentenced today in the Wellington District Court. They had earlier pleaded guilty to 131 charges laid by the Ministry for Primary Industries. Anne-Marie May was at the Wellington District Court for the sentencing.
The ministry became aware of the offending when the record of quantities of fish caught by Hawke's Bay Seafoods did not tally with the larger amount it exported overseas. In total, the 6 defendants underreported the catch of 27 tonnes of blue nose linked to export consignments to Australia between 2012 and 2014. Judge Bill Hastings said the fishing practices involved were not themselves unlawful, but the returns provided by the companies contained false figures. He said the defendants received several advantages, including more than $500,000 from sales of the underreported catch. He said by underreporting their catch, they also avoided fisheries penalties.
The deemed value of Blue Nose 2 and Blue Nose 3 and the agreed discrepancy of 27 tonnes of Blue Nose between landings and sales for each of the charged export events. Esplanade's total deemed value liability, which was avoided by the underreporting, is $218,000.
Judge Hastings said misreporting the catch has consequences and gives the perpetrators a commercial advantage over those filing correct reports. He said it might also affect the accuracy of assessment of this country's fish stock.
If fish management decisions are based on inaccurate information, fish stock could be overfished, diminishing potential long-term benefits to New Zealand and the fishing industry, or fish stock limits could be unnecessarily restricted, resulting in lost fishing opportunities.
The MPI investigation cost almost $2.5 million, and while the fines do not quite equal that, Ministry's National Compliance Manager for Fisheries, Steve Ham, says it's still a great result. He says the De Esposito's offending has an effect on New Zealand's international reputation for fisheries management, which is often held up as the best in the world. It was not the company's first breach of the Fisheries Act. In 1991, Nino and Joe de Esposito and their companies Harbour Inn Seafood Export and Harbour City Seafoods were fined close to $1 million for misreporting fish landings, including almost 600 tonnes of orange roughy. Steve Ham says they'll come under closer scrutiny in future.
We'll be putting more scrutiny around the fishing industry and offending of this nature, because the message here doesn't look good for anyone in the commercial industry when these types of offences are brought to light.
Mr Ham also has a simple message for other fishers tempted to break the rules.
So what's really important here, and the point that we really want to get across, is that for all commercial industry, it's a privilege to be fishing in this fishery, and there's a real undertaking, the government sets in those fishers to do that, to report accurately and truthfully.
The De Espositos will also pay just over $400,000 in redemption fees for the return of 4 fishing vessels used in their offending. They did not attend the sentencing hearing. In Wellington for Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
A review into the environment in the New Zealand women's hockey team has forced the national body to apologise for failing to act on issues within the squad. After a 5-month-long process, Hockey New Zealand today released a 3.5-page summary of findings and recommendations. It says informal concerns were not taken seriously enough, while around 70% of past and present players interviewed reported concerns about a negative team environment, with no specific details or examples provided in the summary about what that negative environment looks like. Sports reporter Clay Wilson asked Hockey NZ board chair Mike Bignell if he would elaborate.
Yeah, look, it is a very broad term, and Maria, in fact, when she has undertaken a review, has been very careful to ensure that the confidentiality of anyone who spoke to her. So the report does not have significant specific examples on a blow-by-blow basis of what had happened. That is not what the purpose of the report was. So we still don't know who came forward, what they said, or even at an individual level, and that wasn't the focus of what the review was. The review was
what they said seem relevant.
Well, Well, again, no, what was relevant is that we had to undertake a review to understand what was going on, what we didn't know, and what we have found is that there are some serious concerns of players.
Confidentiality was constantly used as a reason for a startling lack of detail or information given by officials. That included the reason the Players and Players Association had been given a redacted version of the full report seen by the Hockey NZ board. Players Association representative Heath Mills admitted they didn't agree with the decision to keep the details of the full report so closely guarded.
Yes, that's where we have a different position in Hockey New Zealand, which we've conveyed to them. We do believe that anyone who participated in the review, current or past players, have really gone out on a limb to do so, and that they should have access to the Maria Dew review and the outcomes of it. And certainly I think in her executive summary, which we haven't seen the full version of, would be great if that was in the public domain. But having said that, we also respect Hockey New Zealand's position and right to hold a different view. And we need to focus on working with them moving forward, that old cliche I know, to develop better systems and structures from their end that will ensure we don't land in this spot again.
The resignation of long-time coach Mark Hager was a pivotal moment in the review process. Concerns around that resignation last week led businessman Sir Owen Glenn to freeze his substantial funding of the women's squad. Board Chair Mike Bignell says they are still hopeful that the funding freeze will be over soon.
Sir Owen Glenn was incredibly generous to our players and allowed us to be able to put them in a position which is actually over and above what the contractual arrangement is that we have. He's a tremendous supporter and donor to us, and we clearly have to work that through if there was there. But again, as I said before, we're working really hard with Sir Owen to make sure that he continues to be happy to support the environment.
And that's Mike Bignell. Well, Clay Wilson was at the press conference and he joins me now in the studio. It seems remarkable that you had no specific details of what they found and 4 pages worth of information. Do we know how big the original report was?
No, we have no idea, but this is a 5-month-long investigation or a review, and we've been given a 3.5-page summary of the findings. So the fact there's no mention of Mark Hager perhaps isn't so surprising given the briefness of the review. And he was such a central figure in this. Of course, he was the coach of the team, and perhaps the reason behind the negative team environment. Well, those are the allegations, but we don't know anything about whether those allegations or how they were substantiated because there's no detail provided around that.
Or even what the negative environment was. What's the definition of a negative environment? Does it include bullying?
Yeah,
Do we know?
Well, as people may have heard there, I specifically asked Mike Bignell for some specific examples, but yet again, as they did many times throughout this afternoon's press conference, confidentiality was used where it would seem to myself and perhaps some others there who were frustrated by some of the answers that confidentiality didn't apply to all circumstances. Of course, this is a review and that people's identities have to be protected, but such a stark lack of detail really was shocking.
So the thing that I noticed in the summary was that some people said they'd been complaining for years about the situation. What did they have to say about that? Yeah,
so they've admitted that there were some informal complaints made over the past 2 years and going back beyond when this email came out from Mark Hager. And they admit that they didn't act appropriately on them, and some of the changes that have been recommended are around that and making sure that things are acted on at the time. I think they say that the concerns they felt that came from a small number of players, and they felt that the majority of players were happy and they weren't such serious concerns to be investigated. But obviously the feedback from the review suggests otherwise.
Yeah, the feedback from the review found, I think, 70% of the players they interviewed felt that it was a negative environment, which says 30% didn't think it was a negative environment. To be fair to Mark Hager, this team went to the Commonwealth Games and did well.
Well, it's this balance we're constantly, I guess, working with now. We go back to the cycling, the football reviews. It's performance versus player welfare. And player welfare, the balance is swinging quite quickly towards player welfare. And a lot of people would argue it did need to. But it's where does you sit in that balance? And Mark Hager, no doubt, was successful. Like you say, a gold at the Commonwealth Games. He took the team from 10th in the world to the top 3. And large amount of players, even the current players, senior players, the captain, when they spoke out, they spoke in a very supportive manner of Mark Hager. So I guess it shows that he did have some things that perhaps he needed to work on, but that he had a lot of positive. There was a lot of positive to what he was doing as well.
And he's got another job, so somebody wanted him. What have we heard, if anything, from him in respect of this report?
So he did his first game in charge of the Great Britain side, and let's put this into context. Great Britain are the current women's Olympic champions, so he's been accepted into a coaching role by an organisation that I guess has the reigning Olympic champions. They played New Zealand in their first game in Christchurch a couple of weeks ago. He did speak about it then, but I think Mark Hager is more the type of person, he wants to perhaps move on and put this behind him. It was a tough process for him and his coaching to be so, and his character, I guess, to be so closely scrutinised. So he really, I think he just sort of admitted that it had been tough, and he really wanted to move forward with his career.
Before you go, the big takeaway, the big thing that they're going to do as a result of this report is what?
A lot of it's around HR, bringing HR people on board and making sure these things are more closely monitored, and also giving the players more say, bringing them in. They actually told the players this morning and said there was informal discussions with the players this morning about what can be done to improve some of these things. So it sounds like the players are going to get much more of a say and be informed about how, if they do have concerns, how they can raise them and I guess trust that they're going to be acted on.
And more to come as to whether Owen Glenn's still going to stump up his $2 million.
Yeah, we still don't know, so we'll wait and see with that one.
Thank you, Clay. Clay Wilson there reporting on the Hockey New Zealand report. Coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, we'll have the latest from the Oscars, where Green Book has won Best Picture, Olivia Colman has won Best Actress for The Favourite, love that movie, and Rami Malek has picked up Best Actor for Bohemian Rhapsody. Tributes flow for Christchurch businessman Cameron Moore, who died after his jet boat left the water and skidded up an embankment in Wanaka yesterday. And the owners of a Christchurch rest home speak out after giving some residents just 6 weeks to get out. We would love your feedback on lime scooters, fruit flies, the state of New Zealand hockey. Get in touch. Tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. You can text us on 2101, Facebook, Checkpoint RNZ, or plain old email, checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. But next, here's the headlines with Susanna.
Millions of dollars worth of methamphetamine have been discovered inside golf carts in one of the country's biggest drug busts. 2 handguns along with 110 kilograms of meth were found inside the batteries of 3 golf carts imported from the United States last month. 2 men arrested at the weekend appeared in the Auckland District Court this afternoon, charged with importing and possessing the Class A drug. A Napier fishing company has been hit with what's believed to be the largest ever fine imposed on a commercial fishing operation in this country. Hawke's Bay Seafoods, 2 subsidiaries, its directors and a manager have been ordered to pay more than $1 million for sustained underreporting of their blue nose catch. Between them, they admitted 131 charges laid by the Ministry for Primary Industries. Another male Queensland fruit fly found in Auckland's North Shore could have come from the same piece of discarded fruit as 2 others found earlier. The Ministry for Primary Industries says the third one has been found 113 metres from one found in Northcote. It's now focusing on checking fruit for a breeding population. Green Book, about a black pianist and his driver and bodyguard in the 1960s, has won the Best Film Oscar at the 91st Academy Awards. Best Actress at the ceremony in Los Angeles has gone to Olivia Colman for The Favourite, while the Bohemian Rhapsody star Rami Malek is Best Actor for his portrayal of Queen lead singer Freddie Mercury. The Mexican movie Roma has won the Best Foreign Film Award, while Lady Gaga got the Best Original Song for Shallow and A Star Is Born. Auckland Council says it's heard from Lime scooters today, but it's yet to receive all the information it needs to end their suspension. The council and Auckland Transport suspended Lime's licence on Friday until Lime can prove a fault is fixed. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with more news at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. It is about 22 minutes away from 6, and you're with Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. Turning to business news now with Kim Savage, and the demand for broadband is on the rise. Kim, fibre broadband is on the rise, but you've got Chorus, the company which installs it. Well, its profits have dropped off, so what's going on there?
Doesn't make a lot of sense on the face of it, does it really? On one hand, you've got Chorus saying that it installed fibre to 95,000 homes and businesses across the last 6 months of last year. Pretty significant numbers there. But then today posting a net profit of down 36% to $30 million. But when you dig into the numbers, you can find out a little bit more about what's going on here for Chorus. Revenue was down 2%, that underlying profit down 3%, and a slight increase in expenses there for them. So that's kind of what's adding up to that final profit number. The reason revenue was down, Chorus says, is that the numbers on its copper network are of course declining. So of course that then makes sense if you're having increasing numbers of customers turning to fibre broadband. Of course fewer people are then on that copper network, which of course is impacting on that revenue in the end.
Interesting. Hey, and consumers, we still are spending despite there being a few challenges. We're still taking out our wallets, it seems.
Well, I don't know about you, Lisa, but I'm certainly doing my bit to contribute to the economy on the spending side of things. We had retail spending figures out today from Statistics New Zealand, and seasonally adjusted sales volumes up 1.7%. That was for the third quarter of last year. A pretty significant bounce when you compare it to the quarter previous, which was only up 0.3%. So we're seeing some pretty decent numbers there. Some of the things that people were spending money on, spending more in duty-free shops, pharmacies, and food and beverages as well. Where we were spending less money with department stores, DIY and furniture sales. So it seems that some of the analysis from economists comes to the conclusion that people are spending less money on things sort of housing related, which then is reflected by what we're seeing, a bit of a softening in the housing market. So perhaps some household spending a little bit under pressure there, a bit of a squeeze there for people. And in terms of the forward forecast, most economists generally predicting that we're going to see that those numbers sort of fall away over the next kind of year or so.
Thanks, Kim. Good to talk to you. Kim Savage joining us there for Business News today. The jet boating community has been left reeling after the death of a racer in Wanaka. Christchurch businessman Cameron Moore died when his jet boat left the water and skidded up an embankment yesterday. Our Otago Southland reporter Tess Brunton is in Wanaka.
Cameron Moore's parents and son were watching as he raced along the Clutha River. He was no stranger to racing jet boats. The 45-year-old had taken up the sport about a decade ago. But the annual Otago Rivers jet boat race ended in tragedy when his boat flew off the river. New Zealand Jet Boat River Racing Association spokesperson Paul Mullen says Mr Moore's family and the racing community are struggling to come to terms with his death.
As a person, larger than life, as a competitor, larger than life as well. I mean, Cameron was just the strongest supporter of jet boat river racing. He has a boat in America and he travels to America to race over there. He was just a passionate person about racing.
Mr Mullen says racing was in the family's blood, but the tragic crash had made them take stock of their passion. The accident happened about 1:15 on Sunday afternoon along a stretch of the river near the Wanaka airport. The boat's navigator, 34-year-old Adam Wilton of Rangiora, is recovering in Dunedin Hospital after suffering a concussion and broken fingers. Mr Mullen says they still don't know what happened or what caused the crash. What is clear is the boat left the water on a straight stretch of river, crashed through trees and skidded up the embankment. 2 Maritime New Zealand investigators have been at the scene since the crash. The steep rocky terrain made access to the boat, which skidded about 20 metres up the riverbank, difficult. Jet boats can reach speeds of up to 225 kilometres per hour, but Mr Mullen says the danger attracts people to the sport.
With the greatest respect, if they weren't interested in that a bit of adrenaline pump, the buzz that they get from racing at speed on water, then they would go and do something else. But the reality is there are some people in life that get an absolute buzz out of doing things like this. There's an exhilarating feeling, and I can understand completely why somebody like Cameron was so passionate about doing it.
Speaking to jet boat racers today, it's clear how shocking his death is. One racer says he knew Mr Moore when he was a young boy, describing him as a passionate family man. They all spoke about the devastating impact his death was having on his 3 children and partner. There's been an outpouring of support on social media, some saying he was a great guy with an infectious smile and sense of humour.
It leaves the jet boating community and especially the river racing community reeling. We're a small, close-knit community. In this race, there were 20 boats. There may be 50 in the country, but the reality is it represents a very small number of people and very passionate about their sport.
Some racers raised concerns the river was a tight fit for jet boats, saying there was little margin for error. However, Mr Mullins says the Clutha River is a deep, wide river and that it's one of the biggest they race on. He says the association is looking into what caused the crash. It was the second jet boat crash in Otago this weekend, after 9 people were injured during a tourist trip of the Shotover River on Saturday. The Maritime New Zealand investigation is ongoing. In Wanaka for Checkpoint, Cortes Brunton, Tēnei.
The owners of a Christchurch retirement village say it's been a difficult decision to ask residents to leave because its new rest home can't accommodate them all, but they deny it's because they haven't died fast enough. Residents in Maryvale Retirement Village's rest home received a letter on the 15th of this month telling them there aren't enough beds in the new home that's being built and some will have to move out by April. The news outraged residents, with one telling Checkpoint it was bloody disgusting that he had to find another place to live after a decade at the village. Our South Island visual journalist Logan Church repeatedly tried to get comment from the village about what's going on. Finally, he's got an exclusive interview with Jenny Stokes, one of the owners of the Maryvale Retirement Village, who has worked in the industry for decades.
I really appreciate the opportunity to clarify the situation, and I'd just like to say that we're deeply concerned for the welfare of our residents, and I do apologise for the upset that's been caused by this. In terms of the process, we've been updating our residents at our regular residents meetings about progress on the building, but when it came to the final communication, I felt it was important for our family members and residents to receive the same information at the same time. We communicated with our family members first, and then our residents, unless our families told us not to contact their family member. We felt we needed to be as informative as possible in the letters to clearly outline timeframes and possible options. And at the moment, as of today, there's 7 of our 85 residents still to confirm their next move. All the others are either moving into our new facility or have found new homes, often closer to their families.
OK, can you give me a bit of background, please, on this new facility?
Well, like so many of the facilities in Canterbury, our current rest home and hospital were damaged in the Canterbury earthquakes. We were advised that repairs would take about 18 months, so that would mean more upheaval for our residents. We decided to build a new complex with good-sized rooms, ensuite facilities to all rooms rather than offering shared facilities. The new site is smaller than previously, but it will provide beautiful facilities for our residents and going into the future.
So why is this new facility smaller than the current one?
Well, we were constrained by what the site could offer. It's a slightly smaller site than what we're on for our 2 buildings, so we're providing just 1 building. And working with our architects and the council, we were only able to get the 47 care beds on that site.
OK, so 102 rooms overall, and your new facility has how many rooms?
47.
47, so that's a drop of, it's half, isn't it?
It is.
Where does that leave all these residents, though? I mean, surely at some point someone must have thought, what are we going to do with, more than 50 residents?
Well, we have built another facility at the Village Palms, and there's, that's available for residents to go to, and some have chosen to go there. But our residents have choice, and often they will go to the area that they're familiar with, where they have owned houses themselves, or they like to go where their families are, and that's what's happened in this case. A lot of the residents have either gone north or northwest instead of going east to Shirley.
But I suppose the frustration of a lot of these residents is that they're having to move at all. I mean, the residents that we've been speaking to were hoping to spend the rest of their lives with your village in Maryvale.
That's correct.
And your response to that?
It's upsetting and it is an upheaval for them, but, moving into the future, we feel that it was time that we had to start building a new facility for the future. These buildings have, have become past their use-by date.
Is it just a case of not as many residents have died as you expected?
Not at all.
Because that's what many of the residents believe.
We're not in the business of waiting for people to die. We're in the business of helping residents to live a fulfilled life.
Looking back, do you think you could have handled this better? I mean, you've ended up with a village full of quite disgruntled residents here.
We've been talking about this move with the residents and their families for some time. They were aware that it was going to eventuate, but it is always disappointing, and it's difficult for them when they, have to. When they get the notice that, this is the date that we're going to be moving, because any change for an older person is always difficult.
So when were residents first made aware that this could be an eventuality?
The residents had been watching the building process for a wee while now, and we've been talking to them in our meetings and keeping them updated with the progress of the building.
So they've been aware for some time that there's not enough space in the new building?
They are aware that the building was 47 beds, yes, and they've been doing the numbers.
But no one's actually told them until last Friday that there isn't going to be enough space in the new building?
We've been discussing things with family members as they've come in to ask about it. But, it's important to get the same information across to the residents and families at the same time.
But why not tell the residents that there isn't enough space earlier? That's the question.
Well, we've been having discussions with residents and families.
Since when?
Throughout the year.
We're in February.
Yeah, last year.
Last year as well. Since when in last year?
They've been watching the building go up.
But there's a difference between watching a construction project and being told by your management that you might have to move out, isn't there?
Yeah, we've been investigating what we're going to do with this two-storey building, and we have been liaising with all the experts as to how much it would cost to do renovations to it, because it's a substantial building, and we are reluctant to pull it down, but at the end of the day, that's the final decision that's been made, and it was a difficult one to make.
And that is Jenny Stokes from the Merivale Retirement Village, and she was speaking to our South Island visual journalist Logan Church there. It's about 9 minutes away from 6 o'clock. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Keep your feedback coming. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. A police officer on trial for sex crimes is being accused of reciting parts of the complainant's evidence to strengthen his own story. Detective Inspector Kevin Burke, who was mostly based in Orewa, has pleaded not guilty to 2 charges of indecently assaulting a woman over 16 and 2 of unlawful sexual connection. At the High Court in Auckland today, he was accused of lying about having a relationship with one woman to counter the Crown's claim that he sexually assaulted her in her own home. Jordan Bond reports.
Detective Inspector Kevin Burke spent much of today telling the Crown prosecutor, Joe Murdoch, that her suggestions were totally incorrect, or the events she described did not happen at all. Ms Murdoch claims he turned up to the first complainant's house uninvited one evening, drank beer, and sexually assaulted her when he was told to go to sleep. Mr Burke denies this and says the sexual contact was consensual. He says the two actually had a relationship and had met up several times before the night in question as they'd become friends. Ms Murdoch pressed him for the details on a dinner he claims they had.
I said probably, possibly, I think.
And now you're saying in evidence that that might not have been the case?
Again, possibly, probably. I cannot confirm outright that a dinner did occur before. I still stand by possibly, probably. I do know definitely post there was a dinner.
Ms Murdoch asked him where the other meetings took place.
Police station, coffee, and like I said, I was unsure on the actual meeting, the dinner post the 17th, or pre the 17th, sorry.
Well, you're unsure because it's all made up in your head.
No.
Mr Burke says on the night in question, he'd been invited to the complainant's house for dinner and that she told him to bring some drinks for himself and wine for her. He says they drank and ate and talked the night away.
You drank quite a lot then?
I can't recall. I honestly don't know.
And she was concerned about you, wasn't she? That's why she offered you some of the pasta that she'd been making when you turned up to the address.
As I said previously, the dinner was arranged.
So, just tell us what this arranged dinner was. What did she prepare for you?
I can't honestly recall.
Yes, another detail you can't recall.
Mr. Burke says she ended up following him into the spare room that he was meant to stay in, took off her clothes and got into bed with him. The Crown claims she sent him to bed and only showed him the spare room.
And that's the point at which you've grabbed her and you've pulled her onto the bed.
That did not occur at all.
And she ends up on top of you.
It's totally incorrect.
And she's pushing you back and saying, Kevin, what are you doing?
That's totally wrong.
The Crown claims some of the details Mr. Burke has brought up as evidence in court were taken from the woman's testimony. Ms. Murdoch says he's now remembered details about the night in question that he never told the police in his initial interview.
Well, I'm suggesting to you, and you can reject this, that that's yet another example of you changing your evidence and account after hearing evidence in court. What do you say about that?
It's totally incorrect. I think you'll find my account has not changed too much.
The trial continues into its third week before Justice Sarah Katz and a jury. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi nei, ko Jordan Bond, tēnei.
Researchers say poor housing could be costing nearly $150 million a year in ACC claims and health spending. The figure was revealed today at the launch of the new World Health Organization Housing and Health Guidelines in Wellington. It comes a day after the government announced a raft of new rules for rental properties, including more insulation and heaters in living areas. Laura Dooney reports.
The research released at the launch of the new WHO guidelines shows poor housing could be responsible for nearly $150 million in ACC claims and hospitalisation costs a year. Dr Lynn Riggs, a fellow at the think tank Motu, says while it might be expensive to bring houses to a certain standard, it's also costly not to.
We need to look at what are the costs of doing these repairs, and on the other side, what are the potential benefits, so that we know, are we doing the right things? Are we putting our money where we can do the most good?
Ms Riggs says the figure she and her fellow researchers came up with is conservative. She says she's only scratched the surface when it comes to the wider social cost, and wants to look at the impact of taking time off and other well-being issues caused by subpar housing.
There's evidence that we haven't looked at of how it affects people's mental health, how it affects their stress levels and strain, and then how that really can percolate out through the rest of the community.
Lynn Riggs says she was surprised by the large cost related to damp and mouldy homes in New Zealand. Philippa Howden-Chapman is co-author of the report and chair of the group that set up the World Health Organization guidelines. She says the guidelines are a world first and hopes they'll address the preventable health costs identified in the research. Ms Howden-Chapman says new healthy home measures announced by the government are a fantastic step. It includes requirements to install all rentals with heaters, insulation and extractor fans by 2024.
It recognises that it's silly for us to keep on going back and putting a little bit more of insulation in houses. So let's look at the most recent standards, which are still quite conservative compared to Europe or other countries. But let's go for that and bring everybody, particularly rental housing, up to that level.
Renters United spokesperson Kate Day also welcomes the new measures and echoes what the researchers are saying around the harm of damp, cold houses. She says a 2017 survey of hundreds of renters found their most common problem was that their house was cold and damp.
It affected their health and their quality of life, and that they felt powerless to do anything about that. So that's why we're excited to see some changes with these healthy home standards.
Ms Day says how the new standards are enforced will be important.
Tenants tell us that they need it to be easy so that they know whether their home is going to be compliant with the standards, because not everyone can clamber around in the ceiling or go under the house. So that's why we would like to see a requirement that landlords prove compliance with these new standards by providing information up front in the tenancy agreement.
Ms Day says the onus should be on the landlord to prove their rental is up to scratch. In Wellington, for Checkpoint, call Laura Dooney, tēnei.
Time for your feedback now, and we're getting lots of it on the Lime story. The suspension of Lime's licence in Auckland continues as they haven't delivered all the information the council needs to make a decision on whether the brake fault is fixed. This one says, Lime scooters, how many people have injuries from the Lime scooters locking up and haven't bothered to report it? I know someone who's broken a bone in his wrist in 3 places and will be in plaster for up to 12 weeks, but didn't bother to report it to Lime. Maybe ACC reports will give better statistics, says Hillary. And this one in from Cara as well, who thinks that ACC would be a better form of getting those figures. Injuries from e-scooters in Auckland, surely ACC has stats and descriptions. Relying on the company, she says, to provide accurate reporting will be a waste of energy. And this email in too that says we need to talk about the other issues, widen the debate about Lime and the effect that the scooters are having on people who use footpaths and people who use mobility devices, especially older people and disabled people, for many of whom footpaths provide the only means of getting about and staying physically active. Chris says new transport technologies are needed to replace private car trips, but not at the expense of walkers. We have an obesity and loneliness epidemic, and passive transport does nothing to reduce these and may even increase them both as people are deterred from walking. Thanks for your feedback.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, ko Susana Leata with DNA. Auckland's mayor says Lime's handling of its scooter safety problem has been terrible. Phil Goff has told Checkpoint the company should have alerted the council to the problem as soon as it knew there was one. Instead, the council found out through the media about the brakes abruptly locking up.
What I regard as really bad was the Asia Pacific boss saying, look, it's only 155 reported incidents and that's a 0.0086% of all rides. I don't give a damn. 155 reported incidents and 30 of them resulting in injuries is an inherent product defect.
Phil Goff says in most road safety situations, those figures would result in an immediate product recall. The scooters will be off Auckland streets for at least another 24 hours while the council waits for proof the fault has been fixed. It says it has heard from Lime today but has yet to get all the information it needs. Millions of dollars worth of methamphetamine have been discovered inside golf carts in one of the country's biggest drug busts. 2 handguns were found along with 110 kilograms of the Class A drug inside the batteries of 3 golf carts imported from the United States last month. Customs Investigations Manager Bruce Berry says it was a highly sophisticated operation as the batteries were still fully functioning despite being packed with drugs. He says this is the first time firearms have been found hidden inside drugs imported into New Zealand. 2 men arrested at the weekend have been charged with importing and possessing the drug. The road trip movie Green Book has won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Based on a true story, the film depicts the relationship between a black pianist and his white driver in America's Deep South in 1962. Accepting the Oscar an hour ago, director Peter Farrelly described the movie as being about love.
The whole story is about love. It's about loving each other despite our differences and finding out the truth about who we are. We're the same people.
Peter Farrelly. In an upset, Britain's Olivia Colman got the Best Actress Oscar for her role as Queen Anne in The Favourite, beating frontrunner Glenn Close. Rami Malek won Best Actor for playing Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody, which took 3 other Academy Awards. The Mexican movie Roma got Best Foreign Film and its director Alfonso Cuarón Best Director. A Napier fishing company has been hit with what's believed to be the largest ever fine imposed on a commercial fishing operation in this country. Hawke's Bay Seafoods, 2 subsidiaries, its directors and a manager have been ordered to pay more than $100 million for sustained underreporting of their blue nose catch. Mariana Johnson reports.
The 6 defendants had earlier pleaded guilty to 131 charges laid by the Ministry for Primary Industries under the Fisheries Act. The ministry became aware of the offending when the company's records of quantities of fish caught did not tally with the larger amount they were exporting. Judge Bill Hastings also ordered 3 of the defendants, Nino, Joe and Marcus D'Esposito, to pay just over $400,000 in redemption fees for the return of 4 fishing vessels used in the offending. The Fisheries Minister, Stuart Nash, who is also the MP for Napier, says the fine sends a powerful message to commercial operators who flout the law. Ko Mediana Johnson, TNA.
Firefighters have successfully established a 30-metre cold zone around the Tasman fire. Civil Defence says crews have been working for some time to create a zone where nothing is burning and are now working to expand it to 50 metres wide. It says cool weather has helped firefighters, who are also continuing to locate and eliminate hotspots. With all residents back in their homes and public access reinstated to the fire-affected valleys, the temporary Civil Defence Centre in Richmond was closed this afternoon. Donald Trump says progress in trade talks is the reason he's delaying an increase in US tariffs on Chinese goods. The increase from 10 to 25% on $200 billion worth of imports had been due to take effect later this week if a deal wasn't reached by then. The BBC's Chris Buckler reports.
On Twitter, Donald Trump ordered a temporary halt to hostilities. And while there's still no deal to end the trade war between China and America, progress was clearly made over the weekend in talks between the two countries' negotiation teams. Beyond simply postponing the introduction of higher tariffs for billions of dollars of Chinese goods, Mr. Trump has also issued an invitation to President Xi to visit his golf resort in Florida. On that trip, the US president says he hopes they can conclude an agreement.
Chris Buckler in Washington. State Highway 1 between Amberley and Leithfield in North Canterbury has been closed because of a serious crash. 2 cars collided about 4:15 this afternoon, leaving 1 person seriously injured and 2 people with moderate injuries. Traffic is being diverted. A specialist in hydrogen-powered vehicles says fears about their safety as a fuel are unfounded. Jonathan Lever, who's a Unitec engineering lecturer, is the vice chairperson of an international energy agency group that recently met in Rotorua. He says Japan allows hydrogen-powered vehicles to travel on the roads and they meet strict international standards.
In the year 2000, I saw experiments where bullets were fired into tanks of hydrogen being heated in LPG flames. Hydrogen is not any more dangerous than CNG or LPG.
Jonathan Lever says misconceptions about the modern-day use of hydrogen need to be tackled head-on. It's coming up to 6 minutes past 6. Hockey New Zealand's chair Mike Bignell says providing a condensed version of a report on the women's Black Sticks negative environment ensures confidentiality for all those involved. A review was initiated after reports of negative culture and after former coach Mark Hager accidentally sent a mass email naming and shaming players after last year's World Cup. The review report was released today in a 3.5-page summary. Hager, who stood down from the role before the public release of the review, was able to read the draft, but Bignell says the report covers culture, not employment.
This wasn't an employment investigation. This was a review of the program, and what was clear out of that is that yes, there were some serious concerns, and the real failing for us is that when people have concerns, there was an inability or a lack of trust in the system for them to be able to raise those in real time. And when you can't raise those in real time, things cascade, and this is why we're here today.
Mike Bignell. The Northern Stars will be looking to back up last night's win when they face the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic in the domestic netball competition in Hamilton tonight. The Stars upset reigning champions the Southern Steel 66-64 in round 1, notching their first ever round 1 win in club history, while the Magic lost 48-42 to Canterbury's Tactics. Centre pass is scheduled for 20-8. American golfer Dustin Johnson's 20th PGA Tour victory has moved him up to number 2 in the world. Johnson carded a final round 5 under par 66 to win the WGC Mexico Championship by 5 strokes from Northern Irishman Rory McIlroy. Tiger Woods tied for 10th, while New Zealander Ryan Fox finished well back in the field. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Dana Johansson reports on the weekend sport. The first weekend of the new netball season. There's a window on the world of bison. Sentenced to death a quarter of a century ago, but still alive and back home looking after his elderly mother. That's what happens to you when you're part of Malawi's resentencing project. And then there's Laura Dodsworth. She takes photos of people's private parts. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty. Mainly fine, a few showers about Great Barrier Island and the east coast of Northland, and isolated showers this afternoon and evening elsewhere. For Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, showers becoming isolated tomorrow morning, then clearing later. Waitomo to Horowhenua, also central high country, mostly fine. Kapiti Coast, Wellington, Wairarapa and coastal Marlborough. Occasional showers, gradually clearing to fine by tonight. Inland Marlborough, Nelson, Buller and Westland mainly fine, but a chance of a shower about coastal Buller this afternoon and evening, and coastal Westland and Buller tomorrow. For Canterbury and Otago, fine today, cloud gradually developing tomorrow with a few spots of rain in Otago from the afternoon. Fiordland and Southland fine today, mostly cloudy tomorrow with drizzle about Fiordland and Stewart Island. And Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, the odd shower clearing tomorrow morning. It's 9 minutes past 6 and you're with RNZ National.
And you're listening to Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. It'll be at least another day before a decision is made on whether Lime scooters can return to Auckland streets. The e-scooters have been absent from the city since Auckland Council suspended its licence on Friday until the company proves its fleet is safe. Auckland man Leon Thompson suffered a broken jaw after being catapulted off his scooter earlier this month, and at least 154 others have been impacted by a software issue causing their scooters to lock up. Tom Furley reports.
It was like winding back the clock a year for pedestrians like Natasha walking around town today without the threat of high-speed electric vehicles.
Especially just walking down Queen Street, like on the footpaths, you have to watch out for them because they might crash into you or something.
On her way to a meeting, Simone says she's definitely noticed their absence about town.
I just about got run over on Thursday. Older man in a scooter, making no noise. He just went like that.
So is it quite nice to not have them buzzing around?
No, I think the scooters are really good. I think they're better for carbon footprint, but I think the issue is people need to actually use them responsibly. And also they need to be supplied responsibly.
It's that issue of being supplied responsibly which has seen them taken off the street. The council is yet to be satisfied Lime has fully fixed a software glitch which caused the scooters to randomly lock up. Alex, who lives and works in the CBD, uses them often and had it happen to him.
I've had one jam up on me a few times pre-Christmas as well. I think they're fucking dangerous and they're unregulated, but they're good fun.
While the choice of whether to ride one or not has been taken away, some, like Jimmy, had already made their own decision.
When I started seeing that people falling off them because their front wheel locked, I stopped.
Did you actually see that happen? Or,
oh, no. I saw it, I read about it and I was like, well, that's kind of really scary. So I don't want to do that.
He says he'll get back on them once he's sure they're safe. Viv Beck, the head of the Central Auckland Business Association, Heart of the City, says she'd like to see them return once issues are ironed out.
Personally, I enjoyed about them was that people all seem to be having fun on them, and I think if people are enjoying an experience, that enhances an environment. But it depends where they're riding and the experience of others around them. So I think really for a city you have to look at the different facets. But, certainly I hope those issues can be worked through and we can see them back.
The Auckland Council is expecting to hear back from the company early this week. In the meantime, the Mayor and councillors have been bombarded with up to 5,000 emails of support after Lime encouraged its app users to lobby for them. Mayor Phil Goff says the move was misguided.
We don't need a lobbying campaign. We need simply verification from Lime that they've identified the defect, they've remedied it, and that they can now prove that their product is safe to have on the road.
Auckland Council says while the feedback has been very supportive of the e-scooters, it's also had a lot of support for its suspension. It says it's yet to receive all the information it needs from Lime, and it'll take 24 hours to make a decision on its licence when it does. Lime has been approached for comment. For Checkpoint, Tom Furley.
And that same front wheel locking fault that's caused wide-ranging injuries for New Zealanders appears to also be taking out riders in Australia. Councillor Jonathan Shree serves on the Brisbane City Council in Australia. His ward is Gabba, an inner-city ward, think urban landscape full of Lime scooters. Mr Shree has received correspondence from people who've been injured after being thrown over their handlebars after the wheels locked up. The same fault we've seen here. Now, this afternoon, Councillor Shree made attempts to contact Lime about the fault, and he joins me now. Did you have any luck with Lime, Councillor Shree?
No, I haven't so far. Thanks for having me on. It's good to be here. Lime, have been pretty unresponsive today, but I know they're in crisis talks with some of the officers within the City Council. So up here it's a very big city council, and as an opposition councillor, I'm in the Greens party, and currently the Conservatives run the council, so they tend to cut other councils out of the discussions a little bit. But it sounds like behind the scenes there's a bit of a panic on at the moment, where Lyme representatives are meeting with Brisbane City Council representatives, and we're just waiting, kind of been left in the dark, waiting to find out what the go is.
So what are people in your area telling you? What incidents have you heard of?
So I've had one report from a man who was working as a juicer, so those are the guys who pick up the scooters and charge them up, and he said that while he was riding one of the scooters back to his place to charge up, it locked up. He went over the handlebars. Now he's got a broken collarbone and has, I think, 12 screws in his shoulder holding it all together, and he was really frustrated because when he contacted Lyme about this, they said, well, you're an independent contractor, we're not responsible for you, we don't have to take any responsibility for your injuries, which is obviously really concerning, because those juicers are essentially doing a risky activity and should be treated as employees and given the same health protections as anyone else who's doing a dangerous job. I've also heard of a few other residents who've said the scooter wheels have locked up on them and they've come off, hurt the back of their ankle or had a bad bruise on the knee. It seems like it's only started happening in the last week or so, so I'm trying to find out exactly when this has started and how common it is here, but I'm really concerned. I've told the 50,000 residents that I represent that they shouldn't be riding them and put out a public safety announcement, and I'm very close to calling publicly for them to be removed from Brisbane streets. I'm just going to give Lyme a few more hours to get back to me, but this is obviously really concerning.
So you've put out a notice on your, Facebook page, is it? Or?
Yeah, on my social media page, and I'll be sending out about 10,000 emails later today warning people as well, because I think we need to take this quite seriously.
So while you've put out a warning, so far to date, have you seen any warning from Lyme?
No, I haven't, and I've been surprised at how uncommunicative the company's been. They're obviously in damage control mode, but and neither has Brisbane City Council as an entity itself put out any warnings yet. So, yeah, we're all a bit curious about what's going on behind the scenes right now.
You mentioned you're a green councillor. Wouldn't you be in love with these scooters? They're environmentally friendly. They get people out of cars. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually until now I've been quite supportive. I think e-scooters fill a pretty important gap in the transport network. There have been a lot of debates about whether they should be allowed on footpaths or on roads here in Brisbane, and strangely the state government over here has passed a rule saying they can't be ridden on main roads, which has forced people to ride on narrow footpaths that are often crowded with pedestrians. So I think there are definitely some kinks to be worked out in terms of where they're allowed to go and what the top speed should be. But I think in general they can be a good thing for the city. It's really just about whether they're safe and whether they're working properly. And if Lyme can't assure us that they are going to work safely, even if it's only 1 in 1,000 rides where the wheel locks up, that's still a very high risk that I'm not satisfied by.
When did you become aware that New Zealand was having these issues?
To be honest, just this weekend I saw the articles come through in the news, so it's funny how long it takes news to get across the ditch. But now that I'm aware of it, I'm very concerned, because it does seem like it's happening here too.
How was the decision made to put Lyme scooters? You guys are having a trial as well. I understand it's been extended and goes till midway through this year. Did you get to meet Lyme before this? Have you had any other communication with them before?
Yeah, so the trial here started in November, and they had a permit to operate 750 scooters throughout the city. And the Lyme reps, a couple of them came out and met with me directly and provided their phone numbers and were very friendly. And I think they met with a lot of the inner city councillors just to kind of butter us up and get to know us. But just recently, with that 2-month trial expiring, we've put them on another limited trial where they'll get 500 scooters in the city, and another competing company will also be eligible for a permit of 500 scooters.
But to be clear, since things have started to go bad, you can't reach someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's just today. So I've only started making phone calls this morning, and it's been about 6 hours now and haven't really heard anything back. So definitely starting to ask questions.
All right, we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Councillor Jonathan Shree, who's on the Brisbane City Council, and some of his people in his constituency have raised concerns. Some of them have had pretty gnarly accidents, and he's telling people to stay off the scooters until they can verify that the problem has been solved, and it seems very similar to the issue here in New Zealand. Well, it's been all lights, camera and action in Hollywood this afternoon as the stars came out for this year's Academy Awards, dubbed the hostless Oscars. The lead up to this year's award ceremony was far from smooth, and as Elizabeth Brown reports, it ended up with a winner which might get the critics talking.
And with that Freddie Mercury medley from Adam Lambert and Queen, the 91st Academy Awards ceremony was underway. The controversies around this year's awards were many. Kevin Hart quit as host because of past homophobic tweets. The promised Best Popular Film category was pulled before it even happened. And there was a U-turn on a time-saving plan to hand out some of awards during the ad breaks. All acknowledged by one of the first hosts to take the stage, Tina Fey.
So just a quick update for everybody in case you're confused. There is no host tonight. There won't be a popular movie category, and Mexico is not paying for the wall.
The awards may not have had a main host, but they did have some powerhouse performances from Jennifer Hudson and Bette Midler. And the one everyone was waiting for, a duet by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper from their movie A Star Is Born.
In the shallow, we're far from the shallow now.
That song went on to win Lady Gaga her first ever Oscar for Best Original Song, and she paid tribute to her co-star.
My family's here. I love you, Mom and Dad, Bradley. There is not a single person on the planet that could have sang this song with me but you.
But Bradley Cooper missed out on Best Actor, which, as many had predicted, went to Rami Malek for his portrayal of Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody.
Sometimes wish I'd never been born at all.
I think about what it would have been like to tell little Bubba Rami that one day this might happen to him, and I think his curly-haired little mind would be blown.
And while many had tipped the veteran actress Glenn Close to win her first ever Oscar for The Wife, it was Olivia Colman who took out Best Actress for her starring role as a fictional Queen Anne in the 18th century black comedy drama The Favourite.
To be in this category with these extraordinary women, and Glenn Close, you've been my idol for so long, and this is not how I wanted it to be, and I think you're amazing. I love you very much.
The Favourite was widely tipped, along with the Netflix film Roma, to dominate the night with 10 nominations each. Roma director Alfonso Cuarón won Best Director, and the film won Best Cinematography. But it was the feel-good race relations movie Green Book, set in the 1960s and based on the real-life friendship between black musician Don Shirley and his New York Italian driver, which took out Best Picture.
This gentleman says that I'm not permitted to dine here. I'm afraid not.
How does he smile and shake their hands like that?
Because it takes courage to change people's hearts.
It's a film which hasn't been without its controversy. The award was accepted by director Peter Farrelly.
The whole story is about love. It's about loving each other despite our differences and finding out the truth about who we are. We're the same people.
Green Book also won Mahershala Ali Best Supporting Actor, while Regina King won Best Supporting Actress for her role in If Beale Street Could Talk. Meanwhile, on the red carpet, fashionistas say it was red gowns which dominated, but the outfit which has everyone talking belongs to American performer Bill Porter, who stepped out in a voluminous tuxedo ball gown. And it's interesting to note that the first Academy Awards 90 years ago took just 10 minutes. These days, the show goes on for 3 hours. For Checkpoint, Elizabeth Brown.
The government's been urged to hurry up and commit to urgent upgrades of old and risky Defence Force property. Today, RNZ has reported on a scathing briefing to the Defence Minister, Ron Mark, last September, which shows just over 40% of the estate, that's camps, buildings, roads and water infrastructure, falls short or barely meets functional requirements. Our Defence reporter, Jonathan Mitchell, has more.
The document shows barracks at Burnham, Ohakia, Waiouru and Trentham urgently need investment. Over 300 buildings are near the end of their operating life and 47 are potentially earthquake-prone. Overall, it says more than 3/4 of the Defence Force estate needs to be replaced in the next 30 years. National's Defence spokesperson Mark Mitchell says the military has a good knack of maintaining old property.
You could argue that because they are so good at maintenance, keeping equipment going, that the investment should have come earlier. And that's exactly why I keep coming back to the point that when we came into government, this is exactly why we made this commitment over the next 15 years with massive investment into property, into equipment and into personnel. this government just needs to carry on with that plan.
He wants Defence Minister Ron Mark to publicly state his plan for repairs and maintenance.
He keeps reviewing everything. I think it's a delay tactic. He just needs to stump up, restate his commitment to our plan. If he's going to bring that forward, then state clearly what he intends to do and how much money it's going to take.
Ron Mark announced last year $2.3 billion would be spent replacing the old Orion planes with new P-8 Poseidons. Green Party Defence spokesperson Golriz Garaman says she's alarmed to hear about the extent of the outdated estate. She would have preferred to have seen the P-8 money spent on infrastructure upgrades.
I wouldn't have, as I've said, I wouldn't have invested in the planes last year, which were mostly costly because they had war-making technology on them, and we could have gotten on with this.
A defence expert, Robert Asen from Victoria University, has seen firsthand how dated some of the assets are. He says when planning for upgrades, Mr Mark may go for quality over quantity to reflect a modern military.
If you ask the Defence Force, do they need all of the facilities, all of the infrastructure, all of the buildings they currently have, including barracks? And the answer would probably be no. The Defence Force would probably be better suited by a smaller number of buildings in particular, but updated ones.
In a statement, Ron Mark says the previous government didn't appropriate all the $1.7 billion up front for upgrades. He says he's assessing the needs of the Defence Force estate and he won't be rushed into it blindly. Mr Mark says he needed to be sure the investment is smart and future-proofed. For Checkpoint, call Jonathan Mitchell, Tēnei.
Pope Francis has promised concrete action to tackle child sex abuse at the end of a Roman Catholic Church summit on clergy abuse. Clergy guilty of abuse were tools of Satan, the Pope said, pledging to face every case with utmost seriousness. But some victims are demanding more action. The BBC's Martin Bashir filed this report from Rome.
Words of repentance by bishops on the last morning of this four-day summit. They've heard presentations on responsibility, accountability and transparency, and there's no doubting the challenge.
I make a heartfelt appeal for an all-out battle against the abuse of minors, both sexually and in other areas, on the part of all authorities and individuals, for we are dealing with abominable crimes that must be erased from the face of the earth.
One senior bishop at the summit says every church in every country is now on notice.
I think we just have to accept that our moral authority and our credibility in more general terms has been massively damaged.
It's shot to pieces, isn't it?
I accept that our credibility is shot to pieces. How will it be restored? Over a very long period of time and with great tenacity. No amount of spin in all the world is going to do the trick.
As the Pope gave his traditional Sunday address, the Vatican announced that he'll soon issue a proclamation with new church laws to protect children. They're drafting a handbook for bishops, and a task force will be established to help churches struggling with safeguarding. But Peter Saunders, who was abused by a priest, says these measures are simply not enough.
You had a great opportunity this weekend to make real change and it's failed to do so. Somehow I think we're going to be leaving disappointed but also encouraged that the eyes of the world have been on this event.
Pope Francis closed the summit by adopting the language against sexual abuse. Faithful Catholics have demanded action. What they've received today are another set of promises that they must wait to see fulfilled.
Martin Bashir reporting there from Rome. The US President Donald Trump says North Korea could quickly become one of the world's great economic powers if it gave up its nuclear weapons. In a series of tweets, Mr. Trump also praised Russia and China for enforcing sanctions on Pyongyang. The North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is already on his way to Vietnam for a second summit with Mr. Trump this week. And as the BBC's John Sopel reports, there's still a lot of work to be done if there's to be full denuclearization of the Korean peninsula.
Was there ever a more improbable coming together? It was genuinely a moment to behold. The US president with the dictator of a reviled, outcast nuclear power. It was an extraordinary gamble by Donald Trump. because this summit in Singapore last summer gave Kim Jong-un a platform on the world stage. But Donald Trump thought it had brought peace nearer.
We had a really fantastic meeting, a lot of progress, really very positive. I think better than anybody could have expected.
It's certainly true there have been no nuclear tests, no ballistic missile launches. The temperature's been reduced. But the assessment of US intelligence chiefs is that for all the optics, not much has changed.
The regime is committed to developing a long-range nuclear armed missile that would pose a direct threat to the United States.
That's not how Donald Trump wants it framed. He says a lot has changed from when President Obama was in the White House.
Now, where are we now? No missiles, no rockets, no nuclear testing. We've learned a lot. But much more importantly than all of it is we have a great relationship. I have a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un.
The last serious talks with the Koreans took place over a decade ago. They were led by Ambassador Christopher Hill. He says this next meeting needs to be better thought through than Singapore.
The last summit was not nearly prepared as it should have been. So in a sense, maybe what we really need here is a do-over. We have to have a clearer understanding of what the North Koreans are prepared to do in terms of denuclearization.
It's an ugly word and one that the White House doesn't want to use. But this next summit will be about deliverables, a concrete timetable for denuclearization, agreed confidence-building measures. Last time round, it was enough that there were handshakes and smiles and good optics and atmospherics. Now it needs to get down to specifics. Donald Trump has always insisted he's not in a hurry and there's no rush. Aides, though, say there are few issues that have a higher priority for him. Both can be true. But senior administration officials are doing everything to play down what might come out of Hanoi.
John Sopel there from Washington, and that is all that we have time for tonight on Checkpoint. We'll be back tomorrow. See you then.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Auckland's Mayor Phil Goff says Lime's handling of its scooter safety problem has been terrible as officials wait for more information. Millions of dollars worth of methamphetamine have been discovered inside golf carts. A Napier fishing operation has been fined more than $1 million for sustained underreporting of blue nose catches, and the movie Green Book has won the Oscar for Best Picture. Our next news will be at 7. RNZ National, with a fresh take on the day's news at 10 every weeknight with Karen Hay.
Maybe climb Mount Cook and snowboard down it, and then maybe ride the Tasman.
Including the latest national and international news from the RNZ News team.
Once we're in receipt of the information, we'll make a further decision whether Lime's suspension will be lifted.
And always live when and where we need to be.
We'll tell anyone who listens that there's some great punk rockers hidden away in the